Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to the inaugural Shiur on Sefer Ahavas Yisroel. This year, this series is dedicated by the Harris family of Cleveland. Le'iloi Nishmas, Rav Moshe Hauer, Rav Moshe Yisroel ben haRav Binyamin, who embodied and personified the ideals of Ahavas Yisroel and loving the Jewish people. Okay, so similar to Sefer Tzipis Yeshua, I can't really find information about when the Chofetz Chaim wrote this and what the conditions were, how he wrote it. But let's learn the Sefer, and we'll see what information comes up as we learn the Sefer. Okay, Ahavas Yisroel, it's really a kuntras. It's not a separate Sefer. Maybe you'll remember when we visited the Chofetz Chaim's kever and it listed all the svarim that he wrote. This Sefer was also absent from the list. Okay, so it's more of a compendium, it's more of a kuntras. Parak Aleph, Bayivayar Goydel Ha'avan Shel Sinas Chinam. In this chapter we will explain the great sin of baseless hatred. Kasu HaPoskim Alav, the Poskim write on the Lav, D'loi sisna es achicha bilvavecha. Do not hate your brother in your heart. That's a pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean I can't hate him in my heart, but I could tell him I don't like him? Pretty much. Vizel Rishonim. This is the language of the Rishonim. Maybe tomorrow we'll learn about who wrote this Sefer Mitzvahs Hashem that the Chofetz Chaim is quoting. It seems to be an abbreviated edition of the 613 mitzvahs. We'll talk about it maybe tomorrow. Sefer Mitzvahs Hashem Lavin Kuf Mem Beis. Mitzvahs loy sasa. Shaloi lisna balev. Adam kosher miso. You should not hate in your heart a kosher Jew. So I know you're thinking, good, I'm glad that he added it has to be a kosher Jew. Well, we'll have to see what a kosher Jew is. But you're not allowed to hate a kosher Jew in your heart. Do not hate your brother in your heart. The Torah is only warning in this lav animosity in one's heart. Someone who hits his friend, and he shames him, does not violate this lav. You're violating other lav. In other words, if you're physically abusive to somebody or verbally abusive, you're not over on loisisna es achicha b'vavecha. Again, we're not downplaying that, and we're not trying to minimize the severity of that. We're just trying to identify what is the lav of don't hate your brother in your heart. The lav is an internal animosity. Now, if you remember, when we learned Sefer Chofetz Chaim, the Chofetz Chaim said, if through your animosity that you have, that brings you to speak Lashon Hara, then actually the Lashon Hara that you speak, that itself is a violation of Loisisna Sachicha Bilvavecha. Which doesn't seem to jibe with what he's saying here. Because here he says that if somebody hits their friend or shames their friend, you're not over this lav. Okay, so we'll have to define what exactly are the parameters of loisisna tzachil v'lecha. If one person sins against the other, lo yistamenu b'leiv v'yishtaik, you should not hate them in your heart and be silent. Ela mitzvah alav lohaidiyai. It's a mitzvah to tell them, v'loymar lain, to say to them, lama asisa li kach v'kach. Why did you do this? Now, not only is it recommended, it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to ask the person, why did you do this to me? Why did you insult me? Why did you say it this way? Why didn't you invite me? And then and then forget about it. It applies in all places and in all times, meaning it applies in Chutz La'aretz. It applies even in nowadays. Ad kan l'shainim. This is the language of the Rishonim. So a few things we need to clarify. Here the Chofetz Chaim seems to be quoting the Sefer Mitzvahs Hashem, that the Torah only prohibits internal animosity, but physical or verbal hatred is not included in this lav. So the first thing is that seems to fly in the face of what the Chafetz Chaim wrote in Sefer Chafetz Chaim, that if your lashon hara comes as a result of sinas chinam, that is a violation of Lo Sisnas Achicha B'Levavecha. He says that both by the lav of Lo Sisnas Achicha B'Levavecha, and if you remember, he says that in the opening page of the Hakdama to Sefer Chafetz Chaim, where the Gemara says that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam. The Chafetz Chaim says, no, it doesn't mean sinas chinam. It means lashon hara, because it can't be that the Beis Hamikdash would have been destroyed because of sinas chinam. It means lashon hara that emerges from the sinah, which seemed to indicate that one would violate lo sisnas achicha b'levavecha by speaking lashon hara. It's just the Chafetz Chaim says that it's worse than that. It's also lashon hara. Okay, we'll have to clarify that. Now, what is the definition of your brother? Who is your brother? V'inei b'chlal achicha hu kol adam Yisrael. Your brother is any Jew. Your brother is any Jew. V'chadiisa ba'avos Rav Nasan. Al toimar, don't say, Lezeh Yisrael ani oyev. I love this kind of Jew. I love Jews from Shevet Ruvain, but v'lezeh ani soine, but I don't like Jews from Shevet Shimon. Le'oives hachachamim. I love rabbis, v'lisnei samaritz, but I hate unlearned Jews. Ela ehoives kulam. You have to love all of them. Now, nowhere does it say that this is easy. It doesn't say it's easy to love Jews. No, it doesn't say anywhere. Ki ha-mitzvah hazois asher anoichi mitzavcha hayom. It doesn't say ki karoi veilecha hadavar ma'oid, by the mitzvah of loving Jews. No. It says it by tshuva. So that implies that this is not karoi veilecha hadavar ma'oid. This one is not easy. Otherwise it would have said it's easy. So don't be alarmed. Don't say, how am I supposed to do? This is very hard. Okay. Sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone. Now, usna es haminim. You should hate apikarsim. V'chein David hu oimer. Likewise, David said, haloi misanecha Hashem esna. Those who hate you, God, I hate. What is umin? Umin nikra hakoifer b'taras Hashem v'hashgachasei. Umin is called someone who denies the Torah of Hashem and God's providence. Okay, let's discuss one point here. The Chafetz Chaim is quoting from Avos Rav Nasan. Avos Rav Nasan is saying, don't say that you'll be selective in which Jews you love. You need to love all of them. But he says, but hate the minim. Okay, who asked the Avos Rav Nasan to add that point? But hate the minim. This is supposed to be a very positive, upbeat, loving message. Who asked Avos Rav Nasan to add in the end, but hate the minim? How does that contribute to the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisroel? Okay, so I want to just advance an important idea, and I actually think it's true, that this is not just a relevant tidbit, but hate the minim, but it is necessary in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisroel. Let me explain. Shlomo HaMelech said, Eis le'ahoiv ve'eis l'snai. There's a time to love and there's a time to hate. By the way, l'snai doesn't mean there's a time for snow to fall. Okay? Let's say you say a cholam as an O. It's ve'eis l'snow. It doesn't mean there's a time for snow to fall. There's a time to love and a time to hate. That means hate is part of the human condition. Hate is part of the human condition. And therefore, if there is never a time to hate, then you will not be able to fulfill the time to love. Or, an example of that is what David HaMelech says. Haloi misanecha Hashem esna. Oyave Hashem sinura. Those who love God hate evil. So, I happened to see over Yom Tif a passage from the writings of Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap. And he says as follows, Yesh b'chol echad miYisrael achuzim shel sinah. Every Jew has streams of hatred. Umi shezoichel eshtamish b'sinah zu kula la'amalek. If you're able to expend this hatred on Amalek, who mushlam mikol sinah la'acherim, you will have no more hatred to others. Ubatuach hu me'yisr, and then you are vouchsafed not to violate the prohibition of lo sisnas achicha b'lvavecha. Ulu'umaseh, but conversely, misha mishtamish b'achuzim shel sinah la'acherim, if you use your strands of hatred for others, techsa lo sinah la'amalek, you will be lacking in your hatred for Amalek. U'v'makam sinah la'amalek, instead of hating Amalek, soinei liYisrael, you will hate Jews. So he's saying this principle, that every human being has strands of hatred in them, and the reason why the Torah commands us to hate Amalek is to facilitate love for the Jewish people. And I would apply that to what the Ahavas Yisroel is saying as well, that when it comes to minim, when it comes to those who deny the Torah and Hashem's hashgacha, you should hate them. You should hate them. Now, I'm not getting into, does that apply to people who don't have an education? I'm not talking about that now. That's a different subject. But let's say somebody who had the benefit of knowing what Torah is and knowing what hashgacha is, and they chose the wrong path. Let's say they're a full-fledged, accredited min. So then the Ahavas Yisroel is saying that you should hate them. And by hating them, you'll be able to love Adam Kasher MiYisrael. So the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisroel is reserved for Adam Kasher MiYisrael. And that's the majority of the Jewish people, or should be the majority of the Jewish people. And the add-on, Usna'as Haminim, is to facilitate being able to say, you know what? I don't only love my Shevet, I love Shevet Shimon, I love Shevet Levi, I love Shevet Yehuda. Okay, so what do I do with the sinah that sheyesh l'chol echad b'livai? That you need to reserve for the minim. Okay, that's our opening limud of Kuntras Ahavas Yisroel. Have a good day, everyone. Bracha v'atzlacha.